It's easy to forget, very easy to forget the Ukrainians. It's very easy to forget the Nigerians. We have inflation here. Our gas prices are through the roof, so that's their problem. We have our own, but their problems are our problems.
It's our pleasure to welcome back three, I can call them good friends, individuals who are doing some tremendous work with a group, a PAC, which they call Opac. We welcome back those three special guests, and I'll introduce them to you now. George Gigicos is the co-founder and CEO of Vinopoulos Strategic Advisors, a business strategy, communications, and political consulting firm based in Washington, D.C. and New York City, a former deputy assistant to the President of the United States. He is an active member of the Order of St. Andrew, Archon of the Ecumenical Patriarchate. Nicholas Furris is the Opac secretary. He is a versatile producer and director. Nick has distinguished himself with the production of over 250 documentary titles. He was appointed jointly by the Vatican and the Ecumenical Patriarchate as the communications director for the patriarchal visits to Istanbul, Constantinople, and Jerusalem. And in 2016, he served as the worldwide communications coordinator of the historic Great and Holy Council, which took place, as we know, in Crete in Greece. His outstanding work was recognized in receiving the Medal of St. Andrew from His All Holiness Patriarch Bartholomew for his work on Pope Benedict's visit to Turkey, the highest honor that can be bestowed to a layperson by the Ecumenical Patriarchate. Furris has earned 3 Emmy Awards, nominated 5 times, Silver Telly Awards, multiple ITS and Communicator Awards, Crystal Reels Aegis Awards, as well as recognition from the Columbus International Film Festival. And third, Andrew Veniopoulos is the Opac treasurer. Andrew has a long and distinguished career in serving the Ecumenical Patriarchate, the Greek Orthodox Archdiocese of America, and Eastern Orthodoxy in general. He has been instrumental in coordinating all aspects of the trips of His All Holiness Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew to the United States and around the world since His All Holiness's first visit to the United States in 1997. He has coordinated meetings with every sitting president of the United States since 1997, United Nations Secretary General, and foreign leaders from Mexico, Cuba, Israel, and Palestine. Also in 2016, he served as the logistics coordinator for the Holy and Great Council of the Ecumenical Church, which took place, as we said before, on the island of Crete in Greece. All three of these distinguished gentlemen just finished taking care of the unbelievable and magnificent consecration of St. Nicholas Shrine in downtown New York. Gentlemen, welcome.
Thank you,
Thank
Father.
you, Father. Thanks for having us.
It's our pleasure. There's a lot more to their bios, folks, and I encourage you to go to our website and learn more about these three people. Let's start out with, since we spoke last, you people have been very, very busy. Who wants to take the first one? What's new at Opac?
Oh, I'll take it, Father. Again, thank you for having us back. I think this is our third time to be with you at OCN, so it's an honor and a privilege to be with you again tonight. What's new with Opac? We've been very busy. It seems like the war in Ukraine, which is, we call it, Russia's war on Ukraine, has it appears it's maybe have sucked all the oxygen out of the room, if you will, when it comes to what's going on in the church with our fellow brothers and sisters in Christ. And indeed it has. It's a absolutely horrible situation that's going on there. But what we can't forget is the fact that persecution is still running rabid all over the world, in Nigeria, in the Middle East, the Horn of Africa even. So although we've been very outspoken when it comes to what's going on in Ukraine, and can defer to my brothers to talk a little bit more about that, we have been very adamant in the fact that we can walk and chew gum. And although we've been outspoken in Ukraine, we've also been following up on different things, most recently a big win that we had in Nigeria, and of course our first overseas trip to the Middle East, where Andrew and I took off and went to Iraq, and we can talk more about that later. So those are the things that we're really focused on right now. Obviously, we have other initiatives like providing the vesture to poor communities, mostly in Africa. I'd like to thank everybody publicly, the churches and IOCC and the Mission Center and all the retired clergy throughout the United States that have literally filled a warehouse that we have rented to supply all these impoverished parishes in Africa with basic necessities of life. We call it a church in a box, where we provide vestments, crosses, chalices, spoons, icons, you name it. And the first big delivery was to Iraq. And to see the look on that priest's face when we rolled in with a big suitcase and opened it up at a restaurant for him to see, and he was very moved by it. And the funny thing is about that suitcase is I had an air tag in it and I forgot to take it out. So we've been able to track the movement of this suitcase as he goes around to all the parishes in Iraq and gives icons and things away.
The air tags, they're pretty good. I like that. Wow.
Pretty neat things. Yeah, great technology.
You should show that map on your website about where the
Yeah,
stuff.
right. It zigzags along.
That's
But
incredible.
you know, the big thing that we've been really focused on the last 6 months is obviously Iraq and what's going. I mean, I'm sorry, Ukraine, and like the whole world has come to Ukraine's defense. We're no different, although we've been a little more outspoken and a little more harsh than many.
Okay.
And if you want to,
Well, sure. I mean,
a little bit.
yeah, well, I mean, someone had to step up immediately. And we did. I think George and Andy and myself, fratricide. I mean, we're killing our brothers and sisters in Christ. So we immediately, obviously, condemned the invasion, followed up immediately with calling for the stoppage of bombing. We immediately called. It was a holy period in the life of the church. It was during Lent, and
Yes.
we appealed that they take this into consideration. More so than that, we appealed to them to not bomb during Great and Holy Week, which fell on deaf ears, as you all well know. And then we took the bold initiative and we started calling out the leaders, the patriarch, the hierarchs of Russia, for their blessing of this war, for
Right.
their support of this war, which is unheard of. If you are a Christian, you should be against all war. Okay. And then finally, we took it even a step further, and we were the first. We can honestly say we were the first to call out for sanctions against Patriarch Kirill, the Russian Patriarchate, his hierarchs, etc. And that really took the world by storm, because an Orthodox group, we're very proud to call ourselves the Orthodox Public Affairs Committee,
Right.
called out sanctions. And if you remember the news, because news cycles go very fast, the World Council of Churches and then civil authorities began taking heed and taking notice. And I believe the most bold, correct me if I'm wrong, brothers, was England. England actually took an actual and put a national sanction against specifically Patriarch Kirill. So I don't think myself or my two brothers will be going anytime soon to Russia, but that's okay.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, we wanted to make sure that we're supporting and defending not only the Ukrainian people, but within Ukraine, there were Russian priests and hierarchs that were against the war. And they started to speak up very boldly because they were taking their own, I'd be so bold as to say, their lives in their own hands. And we supported them. Andy was on the phone constantly with hierarchs in the Ukraine, and he can speak to that. And then in the background, you can hear bombs. So bringing awareness to this, and not that the world didn't know it was happening, but bringing a different slant that Orthodox Christians and the leaders of an Orthodox church were in support of killing other Orthodox Christians is unacceptable on any level. Andy, you want to add?
Yes, thank you, Nick, and thank you again, Father Chris. Going back to Nick's, when we called out the cessation of bombing during Holy Week, it was actually because the patriarch asked for that when there was bombing by the United States in Serbia back during the Clinton administration. So we wanted to use that as well.
Use his words against him.
Exactly. Use his words against him. And further to Nick's point about the Orthodox clergy under the Moscow Patriarch, Opec was first a rapprochement between the Orthodox Church of Ukraine, as we know, the autocephalous church established by the Ecumenical Patriarch, and the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarch. And since that call, the Ukrainian Orthodox Church of the Moscow Patriarch has broken away from the Moscow Patriarch. And again, OPAC calls for reconciliation of the two ecclesiastical bodies to form one united autocephalous church for Ukraine. And we're glad to see that that is moving in the right direction, and we'll do our best with everyone's help to make that a reality.
Okay.
And then I will, sorry, Father Chris, and the one other thing I would say, we most recently advocated for Ukraine refugees, for governments, for NGOs and corporations, not to forget the plight of these 2 million souls. And George could give you an example of one such organization, corporation, that has helped refugees to reestablish their lives in the new country and still maintain their dignity and their jobs.
Well, it's a real.
Yeah. And the thing that the biggest thing, and that statement will be coming out tonight or in the morning, is a good example is Anheuser-Busch, the biggest beer maker in the world, has a big processing plant, a big brewery in Ukraine. And at the outbreak of the war, they got their employees of that brewery and sent them all to Brussels, to Belgium, and put them up in a place to live, gave them jobs at their operational centers there in Brussels, and really rescued them from Lord only knows what would have happened to them had they remained in Ukraine. And now, 6 months later, Anheuser-Busch has gone to these same people and said, look, we're not going to be able to keep providing you housing. You're welcome to stay here and continue your jobs, but you're making the same amount of money that you're making in Brussels. You're making the same amount of money that you were making in Ukraine. And I don't know if anybody's been to Belgium lately, but the cost of living there and the prices are outrageous. Mm-hmm. And no one can possibly live on a Ukrainian salary in Brussels. So, we need to keep in mind that just because this has gone on longer than anybody wants, the plight of these refugees is just as dire today as it was 6 months ago when everybody was paying attention to it. The news cycle and the way the news media operates, it's, the big news today is President Biden has COVID. The big news yesterday was the January 6th committee. The big news before that was Roe versus Wade. The big news before that was Uvalde. There's always something else. Yep. But if you remember, at the outbreak of the war, this was 24/7 around the clock, the plight of these refugees and the war in Ukraine. Well, their status hasn't changed. The war is just as bad today as it was 6 months ago. The plight of these people, these women, these children, these elderly, is no different today than it was 6 months ago. So instead of being like Anheuser-Busch and telling your employees, well, you can still have your job, but we can't pay for your housing anymore, I think is wrong. And we need to start making sure that these people are still taken care of. These employees don't know what to do. When they first got to Brussels, the company, paraded them around in front of the media. Look what we're doing. And, it was great corporate social responsibility, the way we're taking care of our people. But now 6 months later, it's just like, well, you guys are kind of on your own now. And that's what we have to remember, that the situation is no different today than it was 6 months ago, even though the news cycle has moved onward. So that's something that we're going to take on here later in the week and into next week.
Okay. Ukraine is a big issue, obviously. It's not something people thought, I think, that with the sanctions it would go away. But those people with anything in the know realized that it was not going to be something very quick. And I'm happy to say that we too partnered with the ATR, I believe it's called. It's a cable television station in Kyiv. And this program will be done with what would they call that? Noel, help me out here. They're going to transcribe it, and they're going to put subtitles in the bottom with the Ukrainian language, so that people will be able to understand what it is we're doing. And we do that multiple times per week. We are also raising funds to send to the journalist refugees, because if you can't get the truth out there, then how are the poor people who are living there, whose homes have been, I mean, you've seen the pictures, just obliterated. How do you do that? We have Libra Social Responsibility Group that came in with us, and they've been helping us as well. So I think everyone that helps this effort will do something. Now, what I want to go to is something that all three of you have mentioned, and that is that you spoke out. You did not wait. I don't believe that any one of you are gentlemen who like to stand there and take pictures. No. Because pictures, as we know, you put a picture on the wall and then the next guy comes in, you take the picture down, you throw it in the garbage can, okay? What lasts are the people and their lives. And that's what I'm hearing from you. Please tell me if I'm wrong here. I don't see you as people do this. I see people that go like this and reach your hands out to others.
Father Chris, you know, one of the most moving images that I've seen since the outbreak of the war is the heart of the Polish people. When they left strollers at the train stations and walked away, they didn't stay with the stroller.
No.
They didn't say, here, come, I'm going to give you the stroller. They left the stroller there, and they knew that the people who needed the stroller would take the stroller. And they went back home, and they probably figured out a way to buy another stroller or another box of bread. The heart is what needs to change around the world. It's not in the news cycle, but bombs are still being dropped. Persecution of the church is still rampant, and they're losing that public relations war. I find it very ironic that the one metropolitan, who is it? Hilarion is his name, was replaced and sent somewhere else. He was the untouchable public relations face of the Moscow Patriarchate. Well, I guess if you speak loud enough and often enough, people begin to listen. So, and that's what we're going to do. Pictures, we don't want any pictures. We don't need pictures. We want results. If we can save a life, if we can save a church, if we can save, if we can provide, or if we can bring light to a nation to pay attention to something and to do something about it, that's, I think, why we started what we did.
And after all, our tagline is truth lives in light.
Right.
And that's all we want to do, is shine that light on the truth. What is really going on in the world?
And
we don't do that. We don't do that with a slick newsletter, magazines, and wearing tuxedos and all that.
And you see people listening to you, right? What you're doing.
Very much so.
Effect, correct?
Yes, because we don't have an agenda, political agenda. Our agenda is to help our fellow Christians there in Ukraine and throughout the world to come on to relieve that yoke that's keeping them suppressed. And now, unfortunately, you have the Orthodox Russian state attacking the Ukrainian Orthodox state. But we are just here to help. We don't have any political agenda. We're not here to glorify ourselves. We're here to glorify the struggle and to help them in any which way we can.
Just helping. All right.
Father, one of the most incredible things that I've heard, and Andy, you can touch on it, was a couple of months ago. I was approached by the BBC in the UK to try to get through to somebody with the church in Ukraine. And Andrew and I have a working relationship with the Archbishop there that works for Metropolitan Epifani. And Andy and I were together and we called the Archbishop. And I was really struck by the tone in his voice, the fear in his voice. And he agreed to talk to the BBC, and we set up that interview with him, and he did incredibly well. Later that week, he made a video for us that we put on our Facebook, because the one thing that the church there needed more than anything at that point in time was just some money that they could give to their parishes and their parish priests to, let it trickle down to some of the parishioners. And, everyone knows Opac we're not a money grabbing organization. We've never asked anybody for a dime. The three of us are funding this out of our own pocket. And we didn't want to come out and ask for money. And we didn't. We had the Archbishop make a video for us that was incredibly moving and stirring. And the money was to be sent directly to his was it Venmo? What was it? PayPal?
It was PayPal, and it go directly to his.
We didn't even want the money coming through us.
Through you to them, right? Okay.
It needed to go directly to him. And I don't know how much he got. I would imagine it was some, and it was all helpful to them. But the conversations that I've been on the phone with, I know that Andy's had with the Archbishop there, have been really stirring in what they're going through.
That's beautiful.
And it's part of our mission is also protecting and defending sacred space. And early on in the war, I think the Russians were cognizant of not hurting churches. That went out the window a few months ago.
Yeah, unfortunately.
And now they're just leveling anything in their sight.
Yeah,
So that's something that we're going to pick up the mantle on in the near future as well.
All right.
And
Very good.
getting that cleaned up. But it's not all about Ukraine, unfortunately.
Well, let me turn the conversation a little bit now and look at the situation in the Middle East. That obviously that hasn't got much better. What is Opac doing in that different part, not that far away, but that different part of the world in the Middle East when it comes to Christian persecution?
Yeah.
Well, Andy, go ahead.
Sorry. Well, like George said earlier, George and I just recently came back in March from a trip to Iraq, to Kurdistan, and to various cities within Kurdistan, and also to Mosul, which I think George and I might have been the only two Americans there in the last decade or so, and went through the stronghold of ISIS. But George and I wanted to go and see and help monetarily. As George said, we brought up a suitcase full of vestures that we gave to one of the Syriac Catholic priests over there.
Orthodox,
excuse me, in Karakosh. And we also went there with cash, monetary funds so we could distribute out to the different communities. One community in specific in Erbil, they're building a brand new church in downtown Erbil, and we gave them a couple of $1,000s to that, thanks to our great benefactor, Mr. Robin and Michael Psados, who is well known, obviously, throughout the Greek community. And we went to Karakosh and helped there. We went to see the cathedral, the Syriac Catholic Cathedral that Pope Francis visited a couple of years earlier. And it's amazing to see, this was a community of 60,000 people that when ISIS came, completely destroyed, drove everyone away.
In 48 hours, 48 hours is gone.
Everyone 60,000 people had to evacuate the city, and they literally either burnt or destroyed every structure in the city, every church, every home, business, community center, no matter whatever you want to say, it was completely destroyed. And when ISIS was finally driven out in 2018, when the Syriacs came back, only about 30,000, 20,000 came back. They started rebuilding. And it's amazing in this cathedral, they actually left the casings that because ISIS was using the cathedral as a target range. Wherever there was an icon or a cross, they used that as target range, and they kept those icons and crosses as is. They didn't repair them as a reminder. And in the courtyard, they left the casings in the grout and between the tiles and the courtyard as a reminder of what could be done, what hate can bring. And this community, within a short period of time, has flourished. I mean, we were downtown and went to dinner with a group of priests there. Lively. I mean, it was a traffic. It was, you know, restaurants, barbershops, coffee shops. Everything was open, lively. And this people went through hell. And it's amazing because people don't realize Iraq, you know, we go to Jerusalem because that's where Christ, in the footsteps of Christ. Well, Iraq is the biblical, you know, that's Moses, that's Abraham. That's, you know, you can walk in the same footsteps of Abraham. And in fact, even earlier than that, where Alexander the Great defeated the Persian king at a river bend. They know the exact spot that occurred. So Iraq is such an integral part to our history, to human history, but to Christian history specifically. And it's amazing to go there and to see the destruction that occurred, but the resilience of these people to come back from this destruction, to be massacred. And I mean, there's about 3,000 people in this small town in Karakosh. They're unaccounted for, and they're either dead or enslaved by ISIS in northern Syria. I mean, that's just.
I want to get into some of that. I want to talk with you about, because all three of you have seen now and heard a lot of evil things that are doing, but I don't want to go there yet. And I want to ask you the question at the end. Why do you think there is so much evil out there, and why are people persecuting other human beings? But let's not go there yet. Let's go to another part of the world that you're also been involved with, and that is in Nigeria. I know that you had the president of Nigeria, I believe, respond to you, George. Tell us a little bit about that.
So if everyone recalls, you may have heard about it. You know, things happen in Nigeria every day. But about 3 weeks ago, a horrific crime happened in a Catholic church where there were 50, you know, people were at church on a Sunday, and the bandits went in cold blood, murdered 50 of the people that were inside.
On Pentecost.
On Pentecost. And it kidnapped the priest. Just a horrible thing. And this happens day after day, Sunday after Sunday in Nigeria, more so in the north, but nonetheless, the government kind of turns a blind eye to it. And at some point, you know, there's all the NGOs, all the do-good organizations that are over there, and they're all news aggregates. Today in Nigeria, this happened. Yesterday in Nigeria, this many people were attacked. Well, thanks for telling us. What are we doing about it?
We're going to do, right?
So we put out, about 2 weeks ago, we put out a pretty harsh statement that basically calling on the government of Nigeria, the president of Nigeria, to put a stop to this insanity once and for all. And in our statement, mentioned the State Department. And basically, not basically, we called it, what's happening there amounts to state sponsor of terrorism. And we put it out there, and the media in Nigeria went crazy. Front page of the Nigerian newspapers, the Orthodox Public Affairs Committee calls out the president and the government as a state sponsor of terror. The next day, the president of Nigeria was forced to respond to all that negative press and to our statement. And this is exactly why we founded Opac. And if you remember in our first interview, why did you do this? To make noise. You need to make noise. This was a perfect example of us making noise, calling them out, because the next day after he got all that bad press, the president of Nigeria came out and had a press conference and then had his press secretary release statements. And he flat out said that this must stop, that Nigeria is a better country than this. We need to take care of each other. We need to not persecute Christians. We don't need to be killing. The killing has to stop. Yeah. And he was all in on stopping the persecution. And then the next day, once again, the Nigerian press went crazy with it. And they're saying that the reporting was the president is now calling for a cease to the violence in the churches and the persecution of Christians and everything else. Let's be honest, no government wants to be called a state sponsor of terrorism. No government wants an organization like ours to call them that and then say in that statement that we're going to work with the U.S. State Department and pressure them, as well as members on the Hill, to put an end to this once and for all. Nobody should be persecuted for believing in whatever faith they want to believe in, whether it be Islam, whether it be Christianity, whether it be Hindu. Nobody should be persecuted for whatever cause they are. Whatever, if you're a woman of conscience, then you should be able to practice whatever that conscience gives you.
Okay.
And the fact that we got him to respond the way that he did was a big win for us. And now we need to continue to hold him to the fire. One of the members of our advisory board is Nigerian. And, I did an email with him afterwards and he was very grateful. Now we have to keep up the pressure.
Sure.
So, and we're looking end of September, October, we're going to go to Nigeria through our association with the International Religious Freedom Roundtable and its congressional working group that we sit on. We've become close with a man, Pastor William Devlin. Pastor Devlin is an ordained Presbyterian minister from the Philadelphia area. Had a nice church and decided that, doing church on Sundays, I think my calling is elsewhere. And he went to Harlem and he started an evangelical Christian church in Harlem. And that wasn't enough for him. So he started another organization called Widows and Orphans. So now if there is a war, if there are people being persecuted, if there is some wrong in the world, then Pastor Devlin is not just talking about it, he's going there.
God bless him.
Interesting thing about this man is he's a registered nurse before he went to seminary. So the first week of the war in Iraq, he took off and went. And he didn't just go to the Polish-Ukrainian border. I'm sorry, Ukraine. He went to the front lines with medical equipment that he had donated, and he was treating soldiers that were wounded. And he stayed there for 3 weeks. And he left there to come to Iraq to meet us. And now he's in Nigeria. And, he's a special guy that,
he's the real deal. He's the real deal.
Legitimate, real deal. When we were with him, he was in the middle of a 40-day water-only fast. And I thought the 3 days into, I'm like, come on, nobody can do that. He would eat sunflower seeds, Andy?
Sunflower seeds, yes, for the sodium.
2 sunflower seeds a day. And I thought you weren't eating. He goes, I have to eat 2 sunflower seeds just for the sodium. Because he needed the sodium in the water to
amazing stuff.
keep going. The guy had more energy than me and Andy put together. He's 70 years old. Mm-hmm. Just an amazing human being. The thing that really struck me is every place he goes, he's loved and admired. When we went to Erbil, a trip to Iraq is a little risky for Americans, especially an American with my background. And I was a little nervous about it, but everybody that I spoke to before we left said, you'll be okay in Erbil. Kurdistan is pretty safe and you'll be okay in Erbil. So we went. The next day we woke up, we went to Syriac Orthodox Church. And the thing that struck me more than anything in that Syriac Orthodox Church on Sunday morning was the sheer reverence of the people that were in church. You have never seen people as reverent as these Iraqi Kurdistani people were. It really blew me away. So after church, the driver came and got us, and it's okay, we're going to Karakosh. And I looked at Andy and I looked at the pastor and I said, wait a minute, isn't Karakosh in Iraq proper? He goes, yeah, we'll be fine. I go, but we only have visas for Kurdistan. We don't have visas for Iraq proper. No, we'll be fine. Let's go. So I was a little nervous going down there, especially at the checkpoints. But we were with 4 Syriac Catholic priests in the car. They assured us that we would be fine, and we went. When we got to Karakosh, they took us to our quarters, and Andy and I were sleeping in the offices of it's a community center with offices of a former ISIS, like an ISIS office building, would you call it?
No, it was they're using that as a stronghold, as a dormitory for the soldiers.
For the
And
ISIS
again,
soldiers.
so again,
Bullet holes
all
everywhere.
the icons, bullet holes everywhere. Anywhere there was an icon or a cross, it was destroyed. So
That was one of the most interesting nights that I've ever had, to say the least. And the next day we went to what was the name of the town where we got in big trouble with the Iranians?
it's a biblical town.
I can't, it just slipped my mind. But when we got there, it was the Nimrod.
Okay.
And when we got it going into Nimrod, we were stopped. There's a big picture of Soleimani where they told us to pull over, and the guards came, and they were Iranian, and they wanted our passports. And we were there, what, about 20 minutes, Andy? 30 minutes?
Yeah, 30 minutes.
I've never been so scared in my life. Finally, after about 15, 20 minutes, one of the priests got out and went and talked to him, and came back a few minutes later and said, I think we'll be okay. This is one of the priests. This is one of the priests that we had given a lot of money to help with his ministry. And he never admitted it, but I'm pretty sure he paid this guy off to let us go, because a few minutes after he came back, he threw the passports at us, and we let us go. And when we finished in Nimrod, the next stop was Mosul. And I'm like, guys, I think we should pretty much go back to Kurdistan now, but thank you very much. I'm good with not seeing Mosul. And no, you've got to really appreciate it. You've got to go to Mosul. So we said, all right, let's go. And it wasn't that we just went to Mosul. We went to Mosul and we met with an amazing priest there. And, Mosul has, it's 90% Al-Qaeda, 8% ISIS, 2% normal people, and about this much percent of Christians.
Mhm.
And we met with the one Christian priest that was there, who is one of the most amazing men you've ever want to meet. And we asked him, what's the biggest need here? And he said medicine. So he's another one that we were grateful to be able to support financially and give him enough money to buy medicine for his parishioners for what, 6 months, he said?
6 months worth of medicine.
And then what was really striking was after we left Mosul, they wanted to take us to the old city of Mosul, which is across the Tigris. And that's where I was pretty nervous, because the old city it's all ISIS and all Al-Qaeda still. I mean, they were walking amongst us, and they wanted us to see the Orthodox Church there and what ISIS had done to that church. This church was a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and they completely leveled the parish home across the street and completely leveled the church itself. And it was nothing but a mountain. When I say a mountain, I mean a mountain of rubble. Except for on the backside, you could see where the dome was, because it was still kind of intact. It was, but the point I'm telling you all this is that until you go there and see it with your own two eyes, it's impossible. There's no picture, there's no video that can do justice
Right, to it.
for what it's really like and to what these people went through. And it's the same in the Middle East as it is in Africa, as it is any place else where people are persecuted. Those people are the most reverent, God-loving people that you're ever going to see anywhere.
Well,
You
as
know-
we try to wrap up what you've been saying, gentlemen, and these are great pictures that you have actually literally now drawn with your words and with your witness. I'd like to ask you some quick questions that you can respond to as we come to the end of our program. First of all, I see Opac as sort of a thumb in the eye, and I don't say that in a negative way. I say that as someone who is out there rabidly trying to destroy something, and you guys come and you stick your thumb in their eye and you say, wait a minute, you better think twice about what you're doing. So that's one observation I have. The second is, because of what you have seen and what you have experienced, I know this is a very big question and it can't be answered in this program alone, but briefly, from each of you, your thoughts. What do you think causes such evil in your experience?
I would start with saying ignorance, fear of somebody who's different from you. I mean, we see that not just in religion, but in cultural wars as well. Anybody who's different from you is to be feared and to be disliked. And when you have ignorance around the world, there's no love. Ignorance negates love, and there's no love for your fellow human being. In today's world, we are closer as one world than we ever were in the past. And yet we still seem to segregate ourselves, to dislike each other for various reasons. And I think it's ignorance and just seeing somebody who doesn't look like you. And that causes the trouble and the issues that we have here.
Okay. Nick, any of your thoughts?
I agree with Andy. I'll take another slant. There are people who truly believe that they are doing good by wiping out Christians from the face of the earth. There are people who do not want Christians in the Middle East. We see it in the news every day. We see the pressure being put on Christians in Jerusalem. So there is a political agenda. There is a religious agenda. And they feel they're doing God's work by killing Christians. And if somebody doesn't open their mouth and do something about it, Christianity will disappear from certain places around the world, very important places. In fact, ironically, the place where Christianity was born.
Yeah.
So you mentioned putting a thumb in the eye, Father. If I may, with respect, I think what we're doing is we're not putting it in the eye. I think we're trying to open up the eye. We're opening people's eyes this way and showing them that it's not always about the news. It's easy to forget, very easy to forget the Ukrainians. It's very easy to forget the Nigerians. We have inflation here. Our gas prices are through the roof. So that's their problem. We have our own.
Right.
But their problems are our problems unless we do something about it, because then guess what? We'll be next. We here will be next.
True. Very good. George, let me come to you and your thoughts, and also if you could give us just some closing comments about, as the president, what's the next steps for Opac? But first, the issue of evil.
I think there's a lot of things that drive it. I agree with everything that Nick and Andrew said. It's pure hate. There's so much hatred in the world. And like Andy said, it's ignorance, it's hatred, sometimes it's poverty. A lot of these bandits are paid to go in and do this. Look at the Somalis, for example. anytime somebody gets so radicalized that they believe something, it becomes an alternate reality. And honestly, it's happening in our own country right now to a certain extent. You know, alternate realities, radicalization, you know, it's a horrible thing. And I told Andy when we were in Iraq, I said, you know what I would love to do? I would love to sit down with some of these ISIS guys, have a cup of coffee or a beer with them. If we could guarantee that they weren't going to kidnap me or kill me. And say, guys, what in the world is up? What are you doing? This is nuts.
Yeah.
Why are you doing this? What's the end game? Because peace is a lot easier. Living with your neighbor is a lot easier. Now, that's pretty idealistic and simplistic way to look at things, but think about it.
Would be nice.
Think about it. What are you doing? In Nigeria, you know, I'm still tickled to death that we got that guy to respond to us the way we did, and we're going to keep on him.
Yeah, you need to.
Because unless people are making noise, then nothing's ever going to happen. But I would love to sit down with somebody in Boko Haram and say, honestly, what would possess you to go into a church and kill 50 people? I mean, in what world is that okay?
Right.
Other than pure hatred?
It's
So the questions are much larger, and we'll never solve it, you know, in the next lifetime, in the next century.
Right.
But you know, it's the radicalization, I think, of different sects, different religions, different political parties, different people that are different.
Yeah.
Like Andy said, or Nick said, whoever said it.
Well, let's do this now. Let's look at next steps for Opac briefly, George, or Andy, or Nick, whoever wants to take it.
Hey, look, we're gonna keep we're keeping plugging away. You know, we've got our Vesture project that's getting to be overwhelming. And again, I'd like to thank everybody that is participating in this endeavor. You know, when we first started Opac, it's hard to believe it's been about almost 2 years. It's been 2 years since we started talking about it. It'll be 2 years in November since we actually launched. And we always joke that, you know, we're not scholars, we're not theologians, we're not academics, we're three knuckleheads that you can't figure out why people are getting murdered for loving Jesus Christ, right? Never in a million years did we think that it would take off the way that it has. And this vestment idea in Africa really stemmed from, you know, all these African priests on Facebook that send us notes, and they're not asking for anything, but they thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for praying for us. We're praying for you too. End of story.
Mm-hmm.
And then they post pictures of their parishes, and you see churches with their iconostation is plywood, held up brackets with 2x4s, and they get little wood iconas and nail them to them. That's their iconostation. And their altar table is a TV tray sometimes, or they're outside in a tent, or, you know, their chalice isn't even a chalice. It's some kind of like a clay thing that somebody made. So that's where the idea came from. You know, my father's a priest, and, you know, he's retired, and I know that he had a lot of extra stuff and, you know, sitting around. So let's put it to good use, and let's create this altar in a box, a church in a box, and let's put it all together. My dad's got a lot of work ahead of him because he's going to have to help us piece it all together. But you're welcome to come down and help us, Father.
Yeah, we'll be sending you some things from San Jose, from St.
Thank
Nicholas in San Jose as well.
And really start the next big project is start getting this stuff delivered.
Okay.
We're working on teaming up with the airlines and DHL to
Good for
help
you.
us.
Good for
And
you.
so that's a big thing. The other thing is we're going to keep on keeping on with Iraq. We're going to keep calling out Patriarch Kirill for the nonsense that he's participating in. You know, for all intents and purposes, he's just as much an oligarch as the rest of them. We can talk about him some other time. He's a bad guy. And he is not a man of God when he allows the fratricide in Ukraine to continue. And we're going to keep plugging away in Nigeria and Africa, and we look forward to going there in September.
Okay, very good. Give us the website, please.
Is www.orthodoxpac.org. That's Orthodox PAC, one word, .org.
Okay, very good. George, Nick, Andrew, thank you so much for being with us today. We know that the love of Christ trumps all, and I believe that Christ is speaking through you to others, and I encourage all of our listeners to support that which you're doing by going to your website, more importantly, by praying. And if you can find things within your church and not inundate people there at Opac, but if you can find things that churches can use around the world, please do so. Just imagine yourself sitting on Sunday outside with a TV stand in order to have liturgy. No iconostation, no icons, or better yet, imagine the icons in your church filled with bullet holes. How would you feel? We are so blessed to be able to worship as we do here in the United States of America. But that's not the way the rest have it around the world. Thank you, gentlemen, for being with us.
Thank you, Father.
Thank you, Father. We appreciate you very much.